Today is February the 9th, 2018. My name is Tanya Finchum. I'm with Oklahoma State University, and today I am at the, make sure I get this right, the Fire Technology Outdoor Lab.
Fire Protection and Safety Technology Lab.
Okay. And with Leslie Stockel.
Yes.
And this is part of our Spotlighting Oklahoma project featuring women in the STEM fields. So thank you for agreeing to meet with me today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm thrilled.
It's going to be fun, I promise. Okay, let's begin with learning when and where you were born.
Okay, so I was born in Oklahoma City in 1967, and I spent my whole young life, until I became an adult, in Oklahoma City.
Okay. And you brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have. I'm one of 5 children. I have 2 older sisters and a younger sister and a younger brother.
So you're in the middle.
Dead center, that's me.
And tell us a little bit about your parents.
So my parents are still alive, Claude and Brenda. My father was a firefighter in the Oklahoma City Fire Department. He's worked for 25 years before he retired. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, a homemaker, did other types of jobs like worked in retail and owned a interior decorating business and was a very creative cake decorator and artist. And so they're still around. They still live in Moore, and they're doing great.
Were they both born in Oklahoma themselves?
Yes, my father and mother were both born in Oklahoma City. Grew up in Oklahoma City and went to Capitol Hill High School and grew up on the south side, just like me.
Okay, and then grandparents?
My grandparents, now I don't really know a lot about some of my grandparents. I know that my father's father came from Texas, and my father's mother came to Oklahoma. She was from Arkansas and came in a wagon train. My mother's father and mother again came up from Texas. My grandmother on my mother's side, her father was a Texas Ranger, and they came up from Texas. And then I'm about third generation, fourth generation Oklahoma. So yeah.
That's pretty good. Pretty neat that you know that too.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go through your education. Where did you go to elementary school?
So in Oklahoma City, I went to Coolidge Elementary School on the south side of Oklahoma City. And then for middle school, I went to Roosevelt Middle School. And then for high school, I went to U.S. Grant High School. Graduated in 1985.
And did you have a favorite subject along the way?
I always liked math. I always liked reading. And I was never very good in art. So I kind of probably have that, that mindset of a technician or an engineer all along. I had a biology teacher, chemistry teacher in high school who kind of turned me on to the idea of becoming an engineer. And that's, kind of what pointed me toward OSU and the fire protection program, and my dad, of course, being a firefighter.
So in Oklahoma City, you could have gone to either school. You were kind of in the middle.
Well, I was a little bit of a black sheep in my family because there's a lot of OU fans in the house, and but when I decided on the fire protection and safety technology program, that pretty much locked it into OSU, and of course I fell in love once I got here, and I bleed orange now. So.
And so, what was your first semester here? Fall of
1985.
85. Okay.
Yeah. It's my first semester.
So over 30 years ago.
Yes, I know. Don't remind me.
It's changed a lot in that time, I would think.
In some ways it has. There's so many new buildings, but then there's some of the old, ones that you love, like Old Central and the campus fire station, because that's where I lived and that's where I went to school. It's still there. And, like Morrill Hall and Murray Hall and Whitehurst and the library and the student union. They look a little bit different, but they're still the same. There's a lot that's the same.
Did you have to spend the night in the fire station as part of your training?
Yes. So back then in the 80s, they had a program where you could live in the fire station for free room and board, going to the school during the day, and then working for the city of Stillwater as a kind of a part-paid firefighter in the evenings. And so we were not rich. My dad was a fireman. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. They had 5 kids. We were not rich. And I was a university scholar that got for the tuition. And then I got the living in the fire station, gave me free room and board. And so that helped my family, and helped me be able to go to school, full time right out of high school, instead of having to maybe do 2 years of community college or something like that.
Were there other females staying there at the same time you were?
Not at first. I was the second female to live in the fire station.
Okay.
Prior to 1984, no women were in the fire station. And then, someone complained about Title IX, and so they renovated some rooms and made some special private dorms for the girls. And then there was a girl that lived there the year before me, so she was the first. Her name was Carol Ayers. And then she did not live there the second year, and that's when I moved in. And I was by myself at first with about 20 boys. And then another girl moved in the next year, and so I had a roommate for my second year in the fire station.
How did that work with the guys?
Well, it was fine. In the end, it was
Yeah.
fine. I made lifelong friends, and we were like brothers and sisters. We fought, we played pranks on each other, we had a great time. Some of my longest and dearest friends are the people that I lived in the fire station with. Going into it, however, I was completely terrified. I didn't want to do it. I begged my parents not to make me do it. I volunteered to go to community college for 2 years so I wouldn't have to do it. But my parents were smart. They said, no, we think that you just need to do this. And so I did. And then after 2 weeks, I was fine. Everyone was nice. They embraced me, just, treated me like a little sister. And, after 2 weeks, my parents couldn't get me to come home. So just like any freshman at OSU, right?
Would they pull pranks on you?
Oh, sure. And I pull pranks too,
Okay.
so I had my own bedroom, and it had a lock on the door, but if you left it unlocked, I'd find, like my stuffed animals taken and put somewhere, or, sometimes they'd mess with your school stuff. Just pranks. And I did the same thing too. We had water fire extinguishers, and somebody would get wet, playing pranks on each other. And so we had fun. We had kind of a common area lounge where we had a television and some chairs, and you tip people over in their chair just for fun. It was all in good fun. Nobody got hurt. Nobody felt hazed. It was just all in good fun.
Would you eat there as well?
Well, not yes and no. We didn't really have a kitchen. So one of the rooms that they had to renovate to make room for the women was the kitchen. They had to turn that into the women's dormitory because it had the plumbing to put in a bathroom. And so we lost the kitchen, which they would always tease me about, right? Mm-hmm. And so we had like a microwave and a refrigerator and a hot plate. And we were supposed to go over to the residence halls to eat. And so we would do that some, but mostly you'd end up just eating at the Hideaway right there, or
across the street.
Or there's a Subway right across the street. I ate a lot at that Subway and Hideaway, and then I would buy like TV dinners and cook them in the microwave and stuff. So we figured out how to eat. We didn't go hungry.
Well, during that time, did you have to fight a few fires?
It's funny. I lived there 2 years, and in that entire time, I never had like a major fire. I had a lot of dumpster fires. We had a lot of false alarms at fraternity and sorority houses, and in the dorms, in the old Kerr Drummond and Wilhelm North and South, the big high rises. Mm-hmm. And so even Cordell, we would have those, but it just worked out. We worked every other day or every third day we were on shifts, and it just never worked out that I got a big fire. I did get a grass fire once, kind of out west of town, but I just never had that big, like big, what you see it in the movies kind of stuff. Just never happened for me. So.
Well, did the dorm and the fraternity, those fires occurred during finals week or anything connected to that?
If I remember correctly, we didn't have to work during dead week and finals because they wanted us to focus on our studies. But there were some late nights, early mornings. If you were out, you get a call in the middle of the night for something, and then it's hard to go back to sleep when you wake up in the middle of the night. But I remember some late nights and early mornings. So, but it was good. It was a great experience. I really looked fondly back on those days. Very much. So.
Well, let's back up just a little bit. Do you remember actually going through the process of enrolling in the program?
Yes, I do. I remember. So my dad and I came up to Stillwater, and we went through the whole freshman orientation, and My dad went to some things. Of course, I was his third child, and when they asked him, what are you going to lose when your daughter, what do you expect to gain by your daughter going to college? And my dad, he's a funny guy. He said, well, I'm going to gain a parking space, because he had 5 kids. Parking was limited at our house. But yeah, I was, everything was normal. I did the enrollment, and then I remember going on my senior trip from high school. And then when I came back, they had called while I was gone on my trip to New York. And so I called them back, and that's when I found out that, I'd been accepted and I'd gotten a scholarship and I was going to be able to live in the fire station. So that was a pretty joyous day at our house, because it was a big opportunity. And also my parents, it was going to help them out by saving a lot of money for, the scholarship and the room and board and everything. So.
And it was okay that it was OSU.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they were just thrilled. They were thrilled that I was going to college and I got a scholarship. And, they were the ones, they were more, like I said, I was a little hesitant about living in the station, but they were like, come on, you can do it. It'll be great. So, and they were right, it was.
Well, I was thinking in '85 it would not have been computerized for choosing your classes and that sort of thing, your class schedule. So
no, yeah, I remember meeting with an advisor and filling out a form and
paper,
putting it on paper, and then getting some kind of printout. I think had taken that to the registrar's office and getting that taken care of, and getting an ID. I had it was not an electronic ID. I probably still have it somewhere.
Things in that regard have changed a little bit.
Yeah, it's a whole lot easier for students now. Now we were high tech back then. We had a computer lab on the 3rd floor of the fire station. We had some those old TRS-80 Radio Shack computers with the floppy drives like this big, and we could write basic programs for calculating hydraulics and friction loss. And then we also had some brand new high tech IBM, just with 2 floppy drives, that you could do word processing and do some simple Excel spreadsheet kind of stuff. I mean, it was pretty new, and we were pretty excited to have those back then. So my parents had bought me a typewriter, because back then, when you go off to college, you need a typewriter. Right. I never used it because we had that computer lab upstairs. So. That was good. And
it was an electric typewriter?
Yeah, it was kind of a little dot matrix. It was more like a printer kind of. It was not like an old IBM Selectric or something. It was a kind of more. It looked more. The typeface looked more like a dot matrix printer when it would print out. So, I never used it. I think I ended up selling it in a garage sale. So, anyway.
Well, about how many would be in your class? That came in the same time you did?
There were probably about 20 in our class, my freshman class. Yeah.
And how many females? You plus who else?
Let's see. But when I started, there were probably only I think I was the only one in my classes. There were probably about 4 in the whole program. Okay. There were probably only less than 100 students in the whole program. There were 4. I do remember there were 4 of us. But by the time I graduated, I think we doubled our numbers, and there were about 8 of us by that time. So,
and what is it today? Do you know?
For women, not very many. We still don't have a lot. I think we have 15 out of 350 students. So we, like all the STEM fields, we are lacking, and we need more ladies, more women to jump in and join us.
What would you think would be the holdout? Why aren't they interested in it, do you think?
That is such an interesting question, and one that a lot of people are asking, because I don't know. I mean, so it's so strange to me, because when I was coming up a young person in high school, there was never any kind of women, and why don't women want to be in the technology fields and the science fields, because that was the hot new thing: computers, engineering, science. I don't know what happened over the last 30 years, because I've always worked in industry, and there's always been not as many women, but plenty of women. So I don't really know why we have such a lack of women in the engineering fields these days. I can't quite put my finger on it, because the opportunities are there,
Well, it's not from math. I mean, women like math.
I know. And I've heard people say that, oh yeah, girls can't do math. And my whole life, no one's ever said that to me. I've never heard that. and I can't believe anybody would say that. It's just, that's a shocker to me. I don't, where someone came up with that idea, I have no idea, because I never experienced that. So I don't know.
Well, if your high school graduating class, did any other of your female friends choose a technology field?
Yeah, let me think about that. So a lot of my high school kids didn't go to college. I mean, we had a lot of people go into the military or into trade schools. A lot of people from my high school became fire, police, public servants, some school teachers. I'm trying to think if anybody else became, there were a few, maybe, I think I have one friend from high school who now works at the OU Health Science Center in some kind of biology, health field, related field. There's a couple of doctors, so, it's a smattering of people. Yeah.
So your high school, though, had good math teachers, good science teachers, and so it's not really that aspect that's missing.
I feel like I had great math and science teachers and women, too. I mean, the two best math teachers I had in high school were both women. Great ladies, I still talk to them on Facebook today. So.
Well, that may be the key, part of the key then.
Yeah. And then my science, chemistry, and biology teacher, he was just a great guy, but he never treated anybody differently. He held everybody to the same high standards.
Well, if there were that few women in their program when you got to OSU, were there professors, women professors?
No. We just added our first woman professor 4 years ago, Mrs. Professor Charter, Virginia Charter. She graduated from our program in 2005, and then she came on board as a faculty member, and then I came on 2 years ago. So again, second. I'm always the second female, right? I'm always the second one, never the first.
Your turn will come to be first at something, I'm sure.
It doesn't matter.
Well, being one of the few women in your classes, if you didn't show up for class, would they would know that really quick?
I guess. I mean, I was a big rule follower. I didn't, I went through in 4 straight years, and I never dropped a class, and I never changed my major. I probably missed a class somewhere here and there, but, living in the fire station and the classes in the fire station, there really was no excuse not to go to class. Okay. I mean, and we were small enough that if you didn't go, anybody didn't go, the professors would be like, "Where were you?" if they saw you in the hall. And I'd be lying if I said I never not went to class, but I didn't miss very many. Okay. So, and I was the professors we had back then, I was probably a little bit intimidated by them, and so I never wanted to disappoint them, and that's just my personality. I'm a rule follower, and I don't want to let anybody down, so that's just me.
Well, did you have a favorite one?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. I would say Professor Pat Brock, and he's emeritus now. He was just recognized because he's been to more OSU basketball games than anyone else ever. So he's still around, and he was a favorite. I enjoyed his classes. And then Professor Jim Hanson, who's also retired. It was his first year as a professor when I was a student. And then he ended up spending 27 years on the faculty. And he and I just had lunch last week because I looked to him as a mentor, as a new professor, new faculty member. Just you need help along the way sometimes. And he's been great. He's been great. So I really enjoyed those two professors. We didn't have very many. I think we only had 3 at the time. And the other one, Professor Borgel, he's passed away now. He was a tough professor, and he'd been at the school a long time. And he definitely left a legacy that people remember forever. There's 4 of us on the faculty now that graduated from the program back in the day, and we all had all of them, but we always have fond memories of Professor Borgelt, especially because he was so tough.
So that leads into what was the toughest class?
In the fire protection program, for me, the toughest class, there was a class back then called Industrial Loss Prevention, 1684. It was extremely difficult, and we took it as freshmen. And now they teach it as a senior level class because I think somewhere along the years they realized that class is too hard for freshmen, so they moved it. But it was it wasn't. It was just a lot. It was a lot of work, and had to do a lot of report writing, and it was challenging. It was a challenging class.
Well, was it used kind of as the weeder, the
I
course
think so.
to weed out those?
Back then, I think it was used as a weed out. Now we use it as sort of the terminal, like this. Okay, now you're supposed to know everything, so let's apply it. In this class. So it was a good class, though. I learned a lot.
Back in those days, did you spend much time in the library?
Honestly, I'm going to really speak badly of myself and say no. We toured the library in that class. We went down into the bowels of the library and toured the heating and air conditioning system and went through,
cool.
some of the utilities, some of the areas where, the rest of the world can't go, and looked at it from that point of view. But we had a lot of everything we needed in the fire station as far as resources, and you didn't have the internet, you didn't have, I didn't spend a lot of time in the library. I probably should have. I might have had better grades if I had.
Well, just from looking at some of the courses to now, there's a lot of application, it seems.
Yeah, we did.
So you wouldn't necessarily be in the library for that part.
Right. Very, very much technical and applied technology. So.
Well, so when you graduated, did you have trouble finding a job, or?
Oh, no, not at all. Our degree plan has always been very, very much in demand. And I had 2 job offers when I graduated. It's interesting because one was in Oklahoma, at a Kerr-McGee refinery in Wynnewood, Oklahoma, just south of Norman. But the other one was in Erie, Pennsylvania, at a paper mill with an international paper company. So I had a choice to make, right? Should I stay home, stay in Oklahoma and work at a refinery, or should I go to Erie, Pennsylvania? And so I chose Erie, Pennsylvania, much to my parents' disappointment. They wanted me to really take that job in Wynnewood, and I was 21, and I just wanted to get out and see something different than Oklahoma. So I did, and it was good, and I loved working there, and I learned a lot. It was a very challenging industrial manufacturing environment, and I really, really learned a lot at that company. So.
Well, what would be a typical day there for you?
At the paper mill, well, you get there early, like 7. And there would be a morning production meeting every morning where you talk about, all the different departments would come, like production, maintenance, engineering, safety. And you talk about what happened the day before, as far as were there any accidents or was there anything going on. And then you talk about what was coming up the next day with, if we have any critical operations happening, and then after that meeting, you'd go and I'd walk around the plant, talk with people, do sort of informal inspections. And of course, I always had a big to-do list, right? There was always a procedure that needed writing or some training that needed to happen, or, so you kind of had your annual goals and objectives that you worked on. And if something happened in the plant, like there was an accident or a near miss or something, you'd have to go and help with the investigation. And I'll tell you, my first day on the job at that plant, we had an OSHA inspection. I was sat down with my new boss, and he was kind of giving me the orientation, and the phone rang, and they said, OSHA's at the gate. So my very first day on the job, I had to sit in on an OSHA inspection. So
and did you pass?
Well, no, we got cited.
That's typical, though, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what happens. There had been an accident. An employee had been burned, and OSHA had come to investigate. And so we probably got what we deserved. So we needed to do things better. But that was what we were there for, right, is to try to do things better.
That's what I was going to ask, like that skill set that you had coming out of OSU to do that. You were already trained and knew how to do what was expected.
Yes,
to some extent.
When you're in college, you sort of learn the theoretical sides of things, and you learn how things should be. You learn all the rules, all the regulations. And then when you get to the real world, things don't always work out the way that they're supposed to. And the theoretical, there's the theoretical ideas, but then there's the reality of what has to happen and dealing with people and different ideas. The one thing was a big surprise to me is, companies will hire the best of the best, right? They'll hire the best students. Well, then you get at a plant where they've hired the best fire and safety engineer, and they've hired the best chemical engineer, and they'll hire the best electrical engineer. So you get all those people in a room who are accustomed to being the best in their chosen field. there's conflict.
Imagine that, yes.
And some egos, and so you got to learn to. And they don't really teach us that in college. They don't teach you how to navigate the political or the social or the people side of engineering. So you kind of have to learn that. You have to learn that, if you want to be successful, you got to learn how to influence people. And I would say that's what I've learned the most in my career is how to try to influence people. Sometimes I've been successful and sometimes I haven't, but it's definitely something that's a necessary skill.
Oh, and would think being a female that would help with that a little bit too.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I think we're, we can be more caring maybe.
That's being too stereotypical on my part, so just seeing.
I'm a bit of an introvert, I mean, I'm kind of a nerd, and I struggle. I was very shy as a child, and even, as a young adult, I was very shy, and that's always been something I've struggled with is, I'm not just that naturally engaging person. I'm more matter of fact. I'm more, these are the rules and let's follow them. So I've had to sort of develop my my people skills over the years, I'm probably better than I was, but it's still something I always have to work on.
Well, these other engineers that were in the mix, were they males?
Some of both, mostly males, obviously. But there's always, I would always tend to make friends. I've made some great friends with some female engineers over the years, some chemical engineers, electrical and mechanical engineers. Working in a paper mill, there's a lot of engineers, and so we always tended to gravitate towards each other, and I made some really good friends over the years.
So what would your title have been?
When I first started, I was a safety engineer.
Safety, okay.
And then I was promoted up to senior safety engineer, and then they moved me from Erie, Pennsylvania to Texarkana, Texas, and I was there as a senior safety engineer, and then I became a safety supervisor. I guess the supervisor retired, and then I was promoted. And then I spent about 7 years working for that company, and then I wanted to do something a little bit different, and so I called a recruiter, and started interviewing for jobs. I kind of wanted to get back to oil and gas or petrochemical, and so I got a job. I moved back to Pennsylvania, to Philadelphia, to work for a chemical company there, and I spent about a year at that company, but I realized I didn't like Philadelphia. Philadelphia was not a good place for me to live. I'm an Okie, and that was just a different culture, and when I was not, and the other thing was I traveled all the time. I lived in Philadelphia, I had an apartment in Philadelphia, but I was on the road from Monday to Friday every week, and that was a very lonely existence, living in hotels, always eating alone in restaurants, always traveling. That's hard for anybody. And when you're not married, you think it sounds fun. People always think, oh, that's such a glamorous lifestyle. It was fun for about a month, and then it became a drag, because you're just always alone. And and even in Philadelphia, I never really got to meet anybody or got to know anybody because I was never there. So the job was fine. Nothing wrong with the job, but living there was just not very pleasant. So.
Couldn't even have cheered on the Eagles, huh?
Yeah. Well, my neighbor, it's a funny story. I was thinking about that this week because my neighbor next door was an Eagles fan. This is like 1996. He was crazy. That man was crazy about the Eagles. And that's the thing about, and stereotyping people who live in Philadelphia, they're very abrupt, just their nature. And I was not used to that. And he was very abrupt with me. And, it just kind of, I was like, don't yell at me. But, it was all okay. And so I only stayed there a year. And I remember it was Christmas time. And I was actually not very happy. And I called my mom. And I was talking to my mom, kind of whining and crying to my mom, saying, I don't like it here. The job is okay, but I'm just not happy here. I made a mistake taking this job. I made a mistake moving here. And my mom kind of got short with me. She's like, well, Leslie, she's like, just stop whining and do something about it. And so I was like, okay, all right, yes, ma'am. And so we had the internet by that time. So I got on the internet and I started searching around, and I saw this news article from Oklahoma about a woman who was a labor commissioner in Oklahoma. Her name was Brenda Renault. And it was this article about how she had blown the lid off of this corrupt system in Oklahoma it was complicated with wage and hour with construction workers, and there was basically a corrupt system of people artificially inflating wage reports to the government so that it would drive the wages up, so that contractors would have to pay their employees more. So it was just this, this artificial system. And she sort of blew the lid off of it, and people went to jail, and so she was hailed as this hero for saving all these public projects, millions and millions of dollars. And she was just this kind of real tough, she sounded real tough, real go-getter. And I was so impressed with her that I just wrote her a letter. I just said, I'm very impressed with you, with all this that you've done and stopping this corruption. And I live in Pennsylvania, but I'm from Oklahoma, and I want to move home. And I'm wondering if you know of anybody who has a job for a safety engineer, safety professional. Well, I sent her my resume. And so she called me like 2 weeks later, and she said, I have a job for you, and I wonder if you'd like to come and work for me. And it just so happened that the director of OSHA for the Oklahoma Labor Department position was open, and she hadn't hired anybody for it yet. And she really liked my resume and my letter. And so she brought me down and interviewed me for the job, and then hired me. And I became the director of OSHA for the state of Oklahoma in 97. And I believe that was divinely inspired, because that just doesn't happen, It just everything fell into place, and I was able to move home, and so that was good. It was good.
And roughly not quite 10 years out of your degree program. Not quite 10 years.
Yeah, I wasn't 30 yet.
Yeah.
I was not 30, and here I was in this big position, a very, high profile position. And so, and I got to move home and be closer to my family. So.
Well, what would a typical day be like in that position?
Well, that was a management job, and so that was kind of my first real leadership job. I'd been a safety supervisor at the plants, and I'd had like one person working for me, but we were small, and this was my first big leadership job. I had a staff of 30. I had 4 administrative assistants. I had 3 kind of subdivisions underneath me. And I had no clue. Why did she hire me for that job? I have no idea. I was not prepared. But I'm a hard worker, and I dug in and I learned what to do. I had some real big personnel problems. I had to fire people. I had to discipline people. I had workplace violence issues. This is state government. Back then in state government, there was a big scandal about, they called them the ghost employees, like people just not showing up to work forever and getting paid. And I had some of that. I had people doing things with state resources that were not appropriate. It was a mess. Yeah. And I had to try to clean it up. And maybe that's why she hired me, because she thought she saw something in me to do that. And I did. I cleaned it up. I got rid of the bad apples, and I hired some new people, and we turned that program around and got it operating efficiently, and we did good. We did some good work there. So.
And how long were you there?
I was only there for 4 years. And so it's just, it's funny how life is just a journey, right? And you think you're going to do one thing, and then you end up doing another. So when I moved home in 97, I said, that's it. I'm back in Oklahoma. I'm not traveling anymore unless I have to. I'm not moving again. This is it. This is where I'm going to stay. And then I met my husband. And my husband was a dashing Air Force officer. He worked at Tinker Air Force Base in the AWACS, and he swept me off my feet. And, we fell in love and got married. And, of course, he's an officer in the Air Force, and so you have to move when you're in the Air Force. And so I was there. We were there for 4 years. And he got restationed to Las Vegas. So we had a baby in December of 2001. Was it 2001? 2000. I can't remember now. And we moved to Las Vegas in April of 2001. So yeah, it was 2001. And so I left that job, and we moved out to Las Vegas. And I actually did get a job out there. Working for an insurance company, just doing, risk assessments for insurance. And then 9/11 happened. And so my husband being in the military, his workload, he never deployed during that time frame. What he did in Las Vegas required him to stay in Las Vegas, but just the general pace and tempo of everyone in the military's work increased immediately after 9/11, as you can imagine. And I had a new baby, and he was sick all the time from being in daycare, and I was trying to start a new job, and it was just very stressful. And so we decided when I got pregnant with my second child that I would be a stay-at-home mom. And so I left my job and I left my career, and I thought, okay, that's what I'll do. I'm going to raise my children, and we did that. And I thought I was just going to quit completely. And I always joke that I tried to get out of safety once, but it's like being in the mafia, and you think you're out, and they just keep pulling you back in, because people just kept calling me to do stuff. Like they'd call me and say, hey, can you do this training for us? And I would say, okay, yeah, I can do that. And then they would say, hey, we need you to write a procedure. Can you do that? And I'd say, yeah, okay, I can write this procedure. And, I could do all this from home. While I was working, taking care of my kids, I could do it from home. And then, so it was an OSU professor who I never had as a student. His name was J.D. Brown. He's retired, emeritus professor now. He had come on board after I had graduated, but I knew him through the Oklahoma Department of Labor and some committees and associations we were on. He called me up and he said, hey, I think that you should become a college professor. And I was like, really? And he's like, yes. He goes, but you got to get a master's degree. He says, now's the time to do that, because you're not working a full-time job and you can probably do that. So I said, okay, I'll look into it. And I did. So I found out about the Engineering and Technology Management Master's Degree program here at OSU in the Industrial Engineering Department. And they had they didn't call it online learning back then. It was called distance learning. And so I signed up, I got accepted into the program, and I started that in 2001 is when I started my master's program. And so back then, it was not online learning, it was distance learning. Every week they would send me a box of videotapes, VHS, and I would watch them and do my homework and do my readings and do my assignments. I did email my assignments to the professors because we had email and we had internet at that time. But it was funny because it took me about 4 years to do that because I only took like 2 classes a semester just because of my kids and everything. And but by the time I graduated in 2005, they were starting to do streaming video for classes and stuff. And so I kind of made it through that transition. And so I basically was a college student again from 2001 to 2005, and then did a little bit of consulting work here and there and everywhere. So I never really got out of safety. I just stopped working full time. And it was nice though, because it brought in some extra money for the kids and the family, and I could do it, and still my husband, it would fit in with my husband's job requirements and everything. So
it's flexible.
It was flexible, yeah, and it worked. And then I found that I really enjoyed teaching. That was when I really discovered, and I had done safety meetings and I had done in-house training in companies, but this was the first time I really did big training, and I really liked it. So that was when I kind of got the bug in my ear that I would maybe I should become a college professor. So that put me on that path. So yeah.
And you don't need a PhD to do it, to do.
Well, no, I'm lucky. I'm very fortunate that my position is called a clinical assistant professor, and in the School of Technology, because of the years of experience I have in industry, they felt like that I didn't need a PhD for that. I think that they wouldn't mind if I had one, but I, because of all the experience that I've had, that's what I bring to the table instead of a PhD. And I don't do research. I just teach classes, and then I do other extension work and professional development work. So I'm thinking about it. Right now I can't do it with my course load, but
well, if you don't need it.
there's a part of me that's like, goal oriented and like, I get my PhD. I will. I think I will at some point, but right now it's just not feasible.
Your mother will say, "Quit whining and go do it."
Yeah, my mother will say, "Quit whining and go do it." That's right.
So what classes do you teach?
I teach. It's called Occupational Safety. It's a basic OSHA safety course. I teach a course called Safety Management. I teach a construction safety course for the Construction Management Technology department. And then I teach a class called Human Factors in Accident Prevention, which is like ergonomics. So yeah, that's what I teach. And then I also teach some courses for professional development as well. Some short courses, industry type courses.
So not necessarily fire, it's a wide range of things that could happen.
Yeah, so our degree program is fire protection and safety. We started out back in the 1937 as being a firefighting type educational program, but over the years it morphed and evolved. In the 70s, they added the bachelor's degree and the safety side of it because OSHA came into being in 1970, and it kind of transitioned more into like insurance and risk assessment and industrial fire and safety. And it just worked out for me that the jobs that I had were always safety related, and so I kind of veered in that direction. It's funny though, I laugh because every job I've ever had, whenever there was a fire protection problem at that company, they would say, "Well, you went to OSU, didn't you?" And, yes, okay, we'll fix this problem. Even though I'd never really practiced it, in reality, I had that basis of knowledge and understanding, and I could call one of my alumni friends and hire them as a consultant to help solve the problem.
So you stayed connected with a few of them? Oh,
sure.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yes,
we have a huge alumni network, and we have a list server where people post technical questions. I've been a member of that for 25, 30 years, and yeah, we're a very tightly connected program, and our alumni group is very tightly connected. So it's good. It's a good thing.
Yeah, and the program itself is ranked really high.
Yeah, we're up there, and there's a few fire programs in the nation, and then there's a lot of like smaller safety programs, but we're kind of one of the only fire and safety together, and we are very highly rated in the country as a fire protection safety degree plan. So,
and I was reading that students have to take calculus and physics and chemistry, I guess.
Yep, we got calculus, Calc 1, Calc 2, differential equations, and then chemistry 1, chemistry 2, physics 1, physics 2, statics and strengths, thermodynamics, fire dynamics, organic chemistry. It's very rigorous in the math and science. So, yeah.
Well, does the engineering come in there somewhere, like chemical engineering or?
Well, we're an engineering technology degree, and so we take a lot of our classes are technology courses, which are similar to the engineering courses.
Okay.
And we do have a couple of minors. We have a safety minor, and we have a fire suppression minor. And so sometimes we get students from other disciplines. Like currently in my class right now, I have an industrial engineering major, and she's minoring in safety. And then I have a mechanical engineer. I think he's just taken the safety class for an elective. I wonder if he thought it was easy or not. He's probably regretting that decision. And then I have a mechanical engineering technology major, and he wants to minor in safety. That young man, he worked in a manufacturing environment as a machinist, and he saw a lot of really bad safety problems. So even though he's getting his degree in mechanical engineering technology, he has a passion for safety. And so that's why he wants to get that minor. And I love that because, the safety is not the responsibility of the safety department. It's the operations people. And when you have a mechanical engineer who has a passion for safety, he's going to build things, with safety in mind. So he's going to operate the plants with safety in mind. So that's what we like to see, So.
Well, what area of business, this type of thing, do most of your students go into? I mean,
a lot of the oil and gas companies hire from our program.
Okay.
Manufacturing, like automotive or aviation, aerospace, pulp and paper, any of the chemical industries. So companies that hire our students are like Phillips 66, Valero, International Paper Still recruits and hires from our program. But we also have a big fire systems engineering group. And so a lot of the fire sprinkler companies like Jensen Hughes or Pool Fire Protection, they'll hire students to build and design, work on construction projects. Like if you're building a new building, you've got to have a fire system installed in it. So they'll do that. Also insurance companies hire our students like Liberty Mutual and AIG, and because they need risk management professionals, people to go out to the insured's properties and do inspections and assessments for risk.
Just don't think about all that, do we?
Yeah,
Us common folk don't.
Well, it's very diverse. The good thing
it.
about our degree is it is so diverse, and there's so many things you can do with it. And we actually still do get a lot of students that want to be firefighters, and they get our degree, and then they actually go get on a fire department somewhere. It doesn't help. You don't need this degree to become a firefighter, but if you have it, and you want to move up into leadership in a fire department, it can be very helpful for that. And it just gives you a leg up. If you have this degree and you go apply to be on a fire department, you have an advantage over someone who has no degree at all. So, we still get, about 5 to 7% of our students want to take that public service, fire service path. Yeah. But you could also work in a fire marshal's office. You could work in code enforcement. There's plenty that you can do with this degree in the public sector as well. So.
Sounds like you need to be out on the recruiting trail.
Well, I talk to the freshmen when they come in. I talk to their parents.
Did he go younger than that ever?
At this point, I haven't. We've done like junior day and things like that, but I haven't. Just usually it's when people are coming to the campus to find out about the program.
Well, is there an association, like a society or something like?
Yes.
I saw WISE, like Women in Science and Engineering Science, or WE, so I don't know.
Yeah. So we have several different student groups on campus. We have the American Society of Safety Engineers. That's a national professional association, and we have a student chapter. I'm pretty active in that group. I've been active in that group for years. I was a chapter president in Oklahoma City. I'm currently the North Area Director and Deputy Vice President for a 3-state region. I speak at conferences for that. I was Safety Professional of the Year last year for that group. Also, we have the Society of Fire Protection Engineers is a professional group. Our students have a chapter, and then we have some other we have the Fire Protection Society, which is one of the oldest student organization on campus. It goes all the way back to 1937. We have a strong tradition in that group of fire protection students and doing public service in the community and public fire days. Last fall we had a 9/11 memorial stair climb to honor the firefighters who were killed on 9/11. They climbed the stairs at Kerr Drummond Towers in full firefighter gear, to honor those that were killed. We do lots of public service like that. We really have a great group of kids, and they do a lot of great things. I'm just real pleased and proud that I get to be part of it.
You have to be physically fit if you're going to carry full gear up that many steps.
I just cheered them. I wasn't able to go this year because I had some family obligations, but I was cheering them on in spirit, because I couldn't do it. I'm too old.
Well, among these organizations, do they focus on young girls anywhere along the way to encourage more to come in?
Well, it's interesting. Our program, I've never felt treated differently as a woman. In any time I've been involved with OSU and the Fire Protection Department, working for the Stillwater Fire Department in the early days of my career, it's not like we go out trying to recruit women, but we don't discourage them either. We probably do need to do a little bit more, to try to bring in more women to our degree plan. I think it's just indicative of the larger problem,
right?
With STEM, with women in the STEM fields in general. And I have worked a little bit with seat recruiting. I've done some things to try to help, where I can. We probably need to do more.
Start somewhere. Little.
Right.
Even to have you sitting here is a big step. So.
Yeah. We'll see.
Well, then let's back up a little bit too. I forgot to ask you, do you remember graduation day with your bachelor's?
Yes, I do very well, very well. It was a bittersweet day. I mean, I was happy and proud, and my whole family came. But it was sad too, because you're leaving OSU. I'm gonna get a little misty-eyed here, I think, thinking about it. You know, when you're 21 and you've been, when you're 21, you think that 4 years is an eternity, right? Mm-hmm. And I just remember just being like, okay, this is what, I've been working so hard all this time. I'm so ready to graduate. I'm so ready to be done, but I don't want to leave, I remember going through that and kind of having a breakdown and crying one night to a friend, just saying, what am I going to do? And, I think everybody goes through that a little bit, especially here at OSU, because this place just gets into your blood, and it becomes part of who you are. But I remember that day, my family all came. Actually, the funny thing was we found out one of my sisters was pregnant, and so that was a joyful occasion. It was also sad because I realized I'm moving to Pennsylvania and I'm not going to be here when the baby's born, so that was kind of I wanted to go away, but do I want to go away, sort of that second guessing myself. But it was fun. I mean, back then they still had the commencement out in the football stadium.
Oh, it's outdoors. Okay.
Yeah. And then we had a little ceremony back at the fire station for the fire protection majors. There were only 5 of us. So 15 started and only 5 graduated with me. So that was, interesting. But it was a good day. I mean, my parents were proud and I was happy that I made them proud. And, that's one of those times in your life when you don't quite know what's going to happen, but you've got to, you're at a crossing over point, right? Mm-hmm. So it was good. We had a good time that day. So.
Well, while you were here, how often would you go home?
Not very often. For all my crying about not wanting to leave home, my parents would call me and say, when are you ever coming home? I'd go home for the holidays and I'd go home. Now, when I was working in the fire station, if I had to be on duty, I couldn't go home. Mm-hmm. Like once a month. Maybe.
Did you have your own car?
I did.
So you could have.
I had a pickup truck. It was an old beat up pickup truck. It didn't have it was all my dad's old work truck. It didn't have an air conditioner. It didn't have power steering or power brakes, and it didn't have a radio. So I would drive it with the windows down because it was too hot, and I had a tape deck sitting on the seat to listen to music, and you had to like crank the wheel, and I basically had to stand on the brakes to get the car to stop. This truck was a beast. But it got me where I needed to go, And then I think at one time it even broke down. No, that was a different car. I actually broke down on the way from Stillwater to Oklahoma City one night. And I was, there were no cell phones back then, right? Mm-hmm. And I was just standing out there. And this nice couple, they had just dropped their son off at OSU and they gave me a ride home from like Guthrie to Moore. They were very nice. But
still scary.
It was scary standing out there all by myself. And I always drive by that spot and think of that every time. Because I live in Edmond. I don't live in Stillwater. And so I drive every day. And I drive by that spot. And I think about it just about every day. So it's kind of funny.
Pay it forward if you pick up someone that's had trouble.
Yeah. But, you got to be careful, right? You can't be too careful. But so.
Well, of those 10 that didn't finish, did they switch majors or just...
Well, I think that
for various reasons.
Some may have graduated later. Maybe it took them longer than 4 years. Sure. That was probably most of them. Some maybe transferred in like as sophomores, and so they might have graduated a semester before. Okay. There were I'm trying to think of anybody that might have just never come back. I can't remember anybody that just dropped out and didn't come back. Usually it was... it either took them a lot longer or maybe they already had a bunch of credits and they graduated early.
Well, between class and working, what would you do for fun? How would you?
We just hang out in the fire station. That was probably what I did the most, was hang out in the fire station. I worked. I had a job at fire service training here on North Campus as just an administrative helper. And so I went to class in the mornings. I kind of would always set my schedule so I could go to class in the mornings. Then I would work in the afternoons. And then I'd come back to the fire station and, study. And and then just hang out in the fire station. Pretty much that's what we did, was hang out at the fire station.
But hang out and play cards or watch TV or
Watch TV,
just chit chat.
Chit chat, goof around. I like to read, so I would read books. Hang out with friends. We go out. I was a college student, so I went out to Eskimo Joe's occasionally and Tumbleweeds, which was the big place back then. Go down to the Strip, stuff like that.
So you mentioned you like to read. Are you reading a book now? Or in the process of reading something now?
Yeah, I'm in a book club at home with some friends, and we are this year. We're reading. Our theme is books our mothers would have read, and so we're reading old books. And so right now we're reading Valley of the Dolls. The last book I read, I can't remember the author's name, but it was the same author who wrote that book, The Martian. I don't know if you saw it. It's a science fiction book about a guy who gets stranded on Mars, and then he's trying to get home. He's an astronaut. And then, so this book that I just read was about a woman. There was a city on the moon, and this woman lived on the moon. It was just about her life living on the moon. I have a very eclectic reading taste. And that's why I love my book group, because everybody has a different idea, and they pick out different books I would have never picked out on my own, but I really enjoy them. So I listen to audiobooks now because I have an hour commute every day, but you can't get Valley of the Dolls. It's so old, you can't get it in an audiobook. And the one we read before that, I can't get. It was so old we couldn't get it in an audiobook. So I might not be able to participate much in this book club because I can't get the books on audio.
Gone with the Wind might be there.
I know, that's one of my favorites.
I mean, that would be one your mother.
Yep.
Well, maybe.
I've read that book many times. That's a great book.
I think in Dr. Zhivago.
Dr. Zhivago, the Thornbirds. I think we're going to read the Thornbirds next. So, yeah. But yeah, I do like to read, and I like to read all kinds of books, fiction, nonfiction. So.
You wouldn't have a whole lot of time though with driving back and forth and.
Right. That's why I listen to the audiobooks, because I have an hour a day or 2 hours a day to.
And do you have daughters or sons?
I have two sons.
Okay.
17 and 14. So my 17-year-old, he's making plans. He's going to be coming here next year, and so he's
in fire safety or something else.
No, I think he wants to do engineering, but I told him I don't want you doing fire protection and safety unless you just really have a passion for it. Don't do it because you think that's going to make me happy. It's a hard degree, and it's a hard career field, and so you really have to have a passion for it. Because if you don't, you're going to be miserable. And I didn't want him in my classes if he didn't
want to be there.
Because it would be hard for him. I mean, the other students would tease him and give him a hard time, and there would be this constant, I would probably be harder on him because I would be afraid that people would think I was playing favorites. And so, so it would be hard for him, and he only needs to do that if he really, really, really wants to.
Well, does he like math like you liked math?
Yeah, he's really good in math. And so I think he's looking at chemical engineering or electrical engineering. We're going to sit down this weekend and look at degree plans, and because he's got to work out his AP credits and all that.
And then you'll get to come with the tour for
we have
weekend or whatever.
We've done junior day, and we did a tour this fall, and
okay.
He's taking his ACT, and so yeah, he's making plans. He's got big plans, so I think he's looking forward to it. I think he wants to be in college. So.
Well, if you had a daughter, would you have encouraged her to go to the?
Yeah, of course.
To the STEM area.
Well, maybe. I don't think I would make her do it against her will.
Yeah, not discourage. Let's put it that way. Then you wouldn't discourage her.
Right. I mean, so I have two sons, and they are as different as night and day. They're both pretty good in math, but my husband is also very good in math, so they kind of come by it naturally. But they're just so completely different, and they have different interests. And so if I had a daughter, if she was interested in math, I would definitely encourage her in that respect, but I wouldn't just try to force it on her. Mm-hmm. Because, my mother is very, very creative, very artistic, she was horrible in math, and I remember once when she was going back to school, she was taking classes at the community college, and I had to help her with her math and also with her writing. She was not a very good writer. And so, maybe if I had a daughter, she would have those genes and be very creative. And so I would encourage her in the arts if that's where her passion lies.
Still kind of analytical problem solving,
Yeah.
putting pieces together and
Or
things
music,
like that.
Music is very analytical. So yeah. So I kind of feel like so my son, he's probably going to come to school here, but a lot of his friends are going to OU. And he said, Mom, he says, what if I wanted to go to OU? And I said, well, if you got a full scholarship, then I'd be happy for you, but he's probably going to go to OSU.
Or at least start here, huh?
Yeah. The only reason he wants to go to OU is because of his friends.
Yeah.
And one thing I know that he doesn't understand yet, I had friends in high school, and I still have those friends. But when I came to OSU, you develop a whole new set of friends, and the friends that you had in college end up being the friends that you have for the rest of your life. And you still have those couple of high school friends, but the ones from college are the ones that you end up, knowing for 30 years, so he doesn't know that yet, but he will.
Yeah, he'll figure it out.
Yeah, he'll know it.
Well, I'm curious what you came to college with besides the electric typewriter. Nowadays, kids come with a whole lot more than what we did. So.
Well, my truck was full, so I had my typewriter. I had a bicycle, which I hardly ever rode, because the fire station was down on the corner, of Knobloch and University, and everything else is sort of, pretty far away. So I had a bicycle, and I had my fire gear, right? I bet you not very many kids come to school with a bunker coat and a fire helmet and boots in the back of their truck. So I had that. And then just, clothes and some stuffed animals for my bed, and the usual clothes and shoes. And
mini refrigerator?
No, we weren't allowed to have it in the fire station, but because we had a refrigerator, so I didn't have to get that. Now, when my junior year, I did live in Scott Parker Wentz, so I did get a refrigerator when I lived there. So,
just amazing what they come with now.
Oh yeah, they got like full. I didn't decorate my room like I see a lot of kids today decorating their rooms just like. Like crazy. And I didn't do that. I mean, I just moved in. I think I brought sheets and a blanket and a pillow. And that was it.
And you did your own laundry?
I did. And so back then, so the boys and girls rooms were separated, but the laundry facilities in the fire station were in the boys' bathroom. I was not allowed to go into the boys' bedroom or bathroom. So I could not do my laundry in the fire station. So I had to schlep it down the street, down Knobloch. There was a laundromat just kind of past the church down there, past Hideaway. So I would have to take my laundry to the laundromat. And that's when I started. And then my sophomore year, we got a new department head. And he thought that was ridiculous that I had to, take my laundry. And so we basically had a system that if I needed to do laundry, the boys would have to clear out of the bathroom. Nobody could be taking a shower or going to the bathroom. I would have to announce my presence, So we kind of had this system of I need to do laundry, and everybody would clear out, and I'd go in, start my load, and then, and then when it's time to, I'm going in to change now, and, and so we made it work. It worked out. And the guys were great. Nobody gave me a hard time.
Purpose said, here, do mine too while you're at it.
Yeah, like I would do that, right? I wouldn't do that.
Well, did they try to ask you to do that?
No, nobody ever asked me to do my laundry.
Yeah.
No, I never. No.
The department head was spot on then if he realized that it wasn't fair.
Well, the other thing was, living in the fire station on the second floor, we had the pole holes to get down to because we were responding. And when I was not allowed in the boys' dorm, the pole holes were in the boys' dorm, so I was not allowed to slide down the pole because I would have to enter the boys' dorm. And a couple of times I've almost fallen down the stairs trying to get to the truck, and I even missed a couple of calls because, you're putting on your boots and you're trying to run down a pretty steep flight of stairs to make the truck before it leaves. I almost fell a couple of times. And so I did complain and say, look, this is not safe for me to be running down these stairs to catch that truck. So they said, okay, for a fire, you can run in there and use the pole hole, but the boys had to sleep in shorts and, there was a lot of, we never had any problems. I mean, we never had, they always made a big deal out about that, the college and the university, but We never had any problems
Afraid of all
that
sorts, I guess.
that I was aware of. You know,
Was it hard learning how to go down the pole?
I was scared at first. I never loved it, but you do it. It does. It's a quick trip, so it doesn't. You just hold on and you'll go down. Gravity takes care of it, right?
You're right.
But I will say the other thing was, so the fire chief at the time, a man named Jim Smith, he and my dad were friends. So I feel like, you know, there were people looking out for me, you know, and if anything bad happened, you know, my parents would know right away. So like, they always teased us and said, you know, you live in a fishbowl. And I didn't really understand what that meant, but now I do. You know, all eyes were on us. But there was no problems. We had no problems.
Was the equipment heavy that you had to?
The fire gear?
Yeah,
you know, but I mean, you know, I was young, and when you're young, you can do that kind of stuff.
But did you have to practice carrying people out?
Yes.
So that would be hard weight-wise.
Yeah, we had to, before we could live in the fire station, we had to go through a week of firefighter training, and I did eventually get my Firefighter 1 certification. I never could do the over-the-shoulder carry, like what you see in the movies. I never could do that. I was never strong enough to lift a man and carry him on my shoulder. But the thing about the movies is that's not the only way to do it. There's other ways to get them out. You could drag them out, grab them around the torso and drag them out, or even back then we had fire blankets. You could lay down a blanket and roll them on it and then pull them out by the blanket. So there's always, so I could get them out. I just wasn't strong enough to put a full-grown man over my shoulders and carry him out.
That wasn't required.
You just had to get them out.
Just get them out.
You know, you didn't have to, you know. So that's kind of a fallacy that you see in the movies. Even when firefighters in the movies, they make these big dramatic axe swings and kicking in doors, and that's not real. That's not what real firefighting, real structural attack is about. You know, it's much more controlled than that. So.
I think of the movie Backdraft.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it was a good movie, and there's a lot of good things in that movie, but there's definitely some dramatic effect built in for that. You know. Yeah. Because it's a movie, right?
So as a young child, you didn't play with matches?
No, not at all. Not at all. Now my dad was a fireman, and we grew up in a firefighting family. So my dad would work Christmas. My dad would work holidays. We would go have Thanksgiving dinner at the fire station. We would go see my dad at the fire station because he worked 24, you know, every other day. Sometimes he would have to work on your birthday, and sometimes he would have to work on Christmas. But that's just, you know, you grow up in that lifestyle, and to you, there's nothing different or unusual about it. And so today, my brother is a firefighter on Oklahoma City Fire Department. Okay. And my sister Kelly, my oldest sister, she was the fire marshal in the Oklahoma City Fire Department. She just retired last year. So 3 of the 5 of us ended up in the fire and safety careers. So.
They didn't come here though?
No, they both went to college in Oklahoma City. So.
Well, that's still interesting that 3 out of 5 of you followed Dad.
Yeah, followed Dad.
In a sense.
Yeah. I was the son my father never had until my brother was born, right?
Do you have a fire hat?
Not anymore. I used to have one, and I don't know what happened to it. I must have given it back to my dad. I was looking for it not too long ago, with all the moves and stuff. I don't know. He's got several out in the garage, you know, from his days, and so I must have given it back to him. I don't have one today. Now I have a hard hat. I have a safety hard hat.
Well, when did he retire?
He retired like in 1997, 1996, 97. So he's been retired for over 20 years now.
So before you came back.
Yeah. Here. Yeah, because I was living in Philadelphia when he retired. So yeah, he has Alzheimer's now. So he's still okay though. But you know, it's hard.
Well, he'd probably be able to react to the hat or the axe or whatever too.
Yeah.
So we've talked about what your typical day was like at your other jobs. What about now?
What's it like now?
Now.
Well, I get here early. I usually get up at about 5 o'clock in the morning and get dressed and make the drive to Stillwater. Everyone thinks that that's, you know, a big deal, but I actually really like it. It takes me 50 minutes to get from my front door to my office, and I listen to my audiobooks, and I really enjoy just that peacefulness, you know, that quiet, and kind of helps me get ready for the day. And depending on my schedule, I get ready for my classes, prepare my lectures, and do my lectures, and then I have labs, and then I meet with students in office hours, and I grade homework assignments and labs, and I have some graders, so I meet with my graders and give them advice on how to do that, and meet with the other faculty members on how to improve our program and grow our program. I'm working with the C Professional Development Group on an OSHA education center that we're developing, and so I've been doing a lot with that lately, and also very much involved with the American Society of Safety Engineers, so we've been doing a lot with that. So my days are busy.
And then what time do you leave to go home?
Like 4:35, and then unless there's a student activity, and so I'll stay late if there's a student activity. A couple times a year we have evening events, and so I've actually even gotten a hotel room and stayed overnight so that I could get back up early in the morning to be back again. And so I've been lucky, and I haven't had any really bad weather that I've had to drive in. I mean, I say that, I should knock on some wood. Not this year. But so far I haven't had to drive in any bad weather, so I'm pretty fortunate there.
Well, what type of things would you do in your lab?
My labs, we go on tours. So that class is all about learning to identify hazards, and I teach them some basic hazard identification techniques first, and then we go out on tours. Like today, we had a lab today, and we toured the new Endeavor construction site that's being built right there next to the football stadium, the undergraduate lab building. And, it's in partial state of completion. There's a lot of activity going on, a lot of scaffolding, a lot of people working, welding, cranes, scissor lifts, fall hazards. There's a lot going on, a lot to see. So I guide my students through a tour of that, and they have to see if they can find any hazards. And we do a couple of different tours like that. We go up to some local manufacturing companies here in Stillwater, OSCO and Armstrong Flooring. Also, we go out to the fire service training grounds west of town, and we do some confined space and excavation, practical exercises. We're going to tour the grain handling lab, and because you think of grain handling safety. So I try to get them out and to see things as much as they can, because that's the big part of our profession, is being able to see and identify hazards and solve problems. And so I try to get them to, we learn it in the book in class, and then I want them to see it for real. So I try to find places where they can see it.
We think of the oil well fire that they had not too long ago somewhere in the state. I don't remember
down
where.
In Coweta. Yep. And we'll do case studies of real accidents that have happened. And then we'll go down to Cushing to the tank farms, to Phillips 66. They're very gracious and let us come and tour their tank farms every semester. So I'm very grateful for the help of the local businesses and organizations. They're always very supportive of our programs. So
OSU fans, probably some.
Yeah, everybody graduated from OSU, so everybody's a big fan. Last semester we were able, there's a company in Oklahoma City called Northwest Crane, and they brought up a big crane, and they set it up here right on this gravel lot, and we got to play with it basically, controlled, all safe, all very safe. But we got to do the hand signals and lift things and move things, and students love it. The students love the hands-on stuff. The more hands-on stuff we do, the better. So that's what we try to do.
What's the worst accident you've seen or been in charge of seeing it, correcting or whatever?
They're all bad. I mean, I've had to investigate some fatalities, and those are always difficult, and I've had to investigate some very serious accidents where people's lives were forever changed, and that's never fun. It's not the fun part of your job, and dealing and having to talk to the family members and explain what happened to their loved one. That's terrible. It's the worst day of your life. So it's, that's why you work hard on the other side of it to prevent. That's why I have a passion for safety in a workplace, because I don't ever want to have to do that again. It's just terrible. It's terrible.
Was that why you were at the paper mill, or just part of when you were working for OSHA? Or?
Well, we had a fatality when I was at one of the paper mills. And then we had some fatalities at some of the other places as well. So what I did at OSHA, my group did not investigate fatalities. So I never was directly involved with anything when I was at OSHA. But yeah, it's never fun.
Is that something they cover in your classwork?
We go over it. I mean, we talk about an incident investigation and OSHA's responsibilities, and yeah, we cover that.
And dealing with the family, though,
part of it? We probably should. We don't teach that directly. We just talk about the impact that accidents have on the family and the costs of accidents, the emotional costs, the financial costs, the legal costs. We talk about that. So that's a good idea, though. I probably should add some lecture for my students on, crisis.
It's that human interface.
Yeah, I guess. The human interface. I probably should do that. So it's a good idea. Thank you.
No, just add to your list of other.
Yeah, add it to my list of lectures. So,
yeah.
So, yeah.
You do a lot. It sounds like a wide variety of things too. Never a dull moment, I wouldn't imagine.
Yeah, never a dull moment. There's a lot to do. There's always plenty of things to do. So just keep going, right?
Do you have a favorite part? I mean, what aspect of it you like the most?
Working here at OSU? I mean, I love working with the students, when I see a student kind of get it, or they come to me and say, look, Professor Stockel, look what I saw, look what I found. That's when I get, I teach an ergonomics course, and it's not my strongest class, I'll be honest. But last semester, I had a student come to me towards the end of it and say, I was noticing when I cook my dinner that, my wrist is deviated outside of its neutral position. And I was like, yes, we learned something, So when you see the students get it, and then working with the really great students that care and want to be here and want to learn and are excited to learn new things. And then they come back and they say, hey, I got this great job, or hey, this thing happened, and I remember that from your class. Those are the things that kind of make you smile and make you think, okay, what I'm doing, I'm not doing this for nothing,
Do you have master's students too?
I do not, because I only have a master's. I don't teach graduate students, but okay. But I've got some pretty sharp undergrads. I mean, I really do. I've got some sharp kids that have great futures ahead of them. So.
Yeah, they probably look to you as a mentor.
I hope. Sometimes I wonder. It's like, oh, am I teaching? Am I showing them the right thing? And am I being a good example? Because I'm a person, right? I'm a human being. I make mistakes just like everybody else. So I always try to set a good example.
When did you come back for this position?
2016.
16.
Fall of 16.
So we've only seen a couple groups graduate.
Yeah. Now, I've worked as an adjunct here and at another college for about 10 years. But yeah, my first set of this year actually will be like my first big group of kids that I've really gotten to know are going to graduate. So
yeah, you imagine they'll be calling.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling sad. I'm gonna miss some of them, But I guess that's the nature of being a professor. You only get them for 4 years, and I think about Professor Hanson, who was here for 27 years, and all the students that he influenced. And, I hope to do that. I hope to influence some people. I hope people look back on me and say, oh, yeah, Professor Stockel, she was great. So,
do you think this will be your last gig?
Yeah. I'm 50, and I figure if I can stay here, as long as my health will hold up, this will be my last rodeo.
Put you on the spot when I asked that. I probably shouldn't have.
Well, I hope. I mean, I'm not a tenure track professor. I'm a 3-year contract. So I hope that my contract will get renewed because I do love it here. So I hope that it's my last job. I hope that they keep bringing me back for more. So, I hope so.
Eventually moves to Stillwater. You don't.
Yeah, my husband and I are planning. So I have my youngest son is in 8th grade. So he'll start high school next year.
4 more years.
And we decided we wouldn't move them. Nothing wrong with Stillwater schools, but when you're in high, they don't want to leave their friends. Nope. They don't want to. So we decided we would stay, and I would commute until my youngest got out of high school, but then we're going to move. Because my husband's retired from the Air Force now, so.
And do you drive a pickup truck?
No, I drive a Subaru. I wanted something that was safe and it got good gas mileage, and so that was the best car I could find.
I just noticed pulling in today, almost every car in the lot is a pickup
Yeah,
truck and
yeah.
backed in.
Yeah.
So you can get out quickly.
Well, that's what we do for safety. It's safer to back in than to nose in. And so, yeah, everybody backs in.
What if you're not a good backer-upper?
Well, I was never a good backer-upper, but thanks to backup cameras have changed my life. I'm a good backer-upper now because of that. So, yeah. It's something about your cognitive ability when you're going. So your mind is always thinking about where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're pulling into a parking space, you're thinking about where you're going. And so if you back in, you're going to be more careful. But when you leave, and you're thinking about where you're going to the next place, and you're not as careful when you back out in that scenario as you are when you back in. So that's why
it makes sense.
That's why it's important to back in. And that also, then, if you need to make a quick getaway, you can.
So no matter where you go, you back in?
I try. Sometimes it's not possible, but yes, I do try. I like the pull through option. If I can find a spot that I can just pull on through and then I'm nose out, that's the ideal situation.
I do that a lot too, especially at the mall.
Yeah. When there's a big lot with plenty of spaces. Yeah. So.
Well, I'm glad I asked that because I would not have thought that would be the answer.
Yeah. I backed in here. It took me a couple tries though. I had to 3-point it. So. Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot. Is there anything you need to add that I haven't thought to ask that we need to add?
I can't think of anything. I feel like I haven't, my life didn't turn out the way I thought it would when I was 21 years old.
That was one of my questions.
Graduating from OSU. But it never does. I don't think anybody's life turns out the way that you thought it would.
Well, how did you think it would?
So I thought that, so when I was a student, I thought that I would get a job in oil and gas when I graduated.
Mm.
But when I graduated, the price of oil was $8 a barrel, and there were no oil and gas jobs. I was lucky to get that offer in Wynnewood, but, again, like I said, I wanted to get out of Oklahoma. And I thought that I would spend my career in oil and gas, which I did not. Mm. I mean, I never did. I thought that I would get married right away. I kind of went, you're like, okay, I'll go to college, I'll meet the guy I'm going to marry, I'll marry him, and we'll, but that didn't happen, and I didn't meet my husband until I was 30, Not that nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's just the way it worked out, and he's a great guy, and we have a great family and a great life, but, that's not what I thought would happen. It's still good, though. Just the different jobs and the different moves, and, honestly, if you'd asked me when I was 21, you'll be a college professor here someday, I would have said, no, not going to happen, but here I am, and I'm happy to do it, So life just takes twists and turns that you don't expect. And sometimes they're better than what you expected, right? So, you just have to roll with it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go with it. Because what choice do you have, right?
Yeah. Keep moving forward, is all you can do.
Keep going forward. Make the best decision with what you have at the time. So,
all right. Then my last question, I always tend to ask this is, when history is written about you, what do you want it to say? Like, how do you want to be remembered?
It's my personal brand.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's hard to say. I mean, I want people to say about me that she was, what do I believe about myself? This is probably the best way to answer this question. I believe that I'm a good person. I'm a hard worker. I try to do the right thing. And I did good things and touched the lives of the people that I knew. I mean, that's what I want people to say about me. So I just had a friend die last week in a very tragic motorcycle accident. And at his funeral, his wife stood up and said, he wasn't always the nicest man, people might say, but he was good. He was always good. And I think, I want to be known as always being good, always doing the right thing, always making the right decision, even if it was hard. So that's what I want people to say about me, that she was good. So.
Well, I think you're there, huh?
Well, you know, some of my students might not think so.
They will when it's all
Not
said
today.
and done.
Maybe 10 years from now, they'll be like, oh, yes, okay, she was right. But now they're like, I hate her.
I doubt that. Well,
Yeah.
this has been a great interview. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
taking your afternoon to spend it with me.
Thank you. It's been fun. I've enjoyed it.
Good. All right.
Thanks.